Thanks for joining us for the latest episode of the Secure Connections podcast. This channel-focused educational series is brought to you by IoTSSA, the Internet of Things Security Services Association. As always, I'm your host, Brian Sherman, Content Director for Get Channeled and IoTSSA. And joining me for today's episode is Dan Wensley, President of Passportal, a well-respected vendor in the channel community and provider of secure password and document management solutions. Dan is an accomplished sales and marketing executive and channel innovator. He has received widespread recognition and awards that include being named to the top 100 IT industry leaders in the know by CRN Magazine, the top 250 by SMB Nation, and North American Channel Chief by Everything Channel for 10 consecutive years. That might actually be longer. I don't know if we've updated that in a while. But welcome back to the Secure Connections podcast, Dan. How are you today?
I'm great, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Cool. So with ChannelCon and a flurry of other channel events on the not-so-distant horizon, I'm hoping that you got a chance to sneak away for a little R&R this summer. Did you get away at all?
I did. It has been a busy summer. We had the big DattleCon 18 event there in Austin, Texas, and determined that it wasn't hot enough in July in Austin, so my wife and I took off for Vegas for the first week of July. And enjoyed some heat, and that kept us at the tables a little too long. But yes, so I did get some time off in Vegas.
Everybody else runs away from Las Vegas during their vacation season. You're drawn to it. That's a dedicated channel professional right there. So one of the other things I mentioned is ChannelCon is coming up soon. As a longtime member of CompTIA, what are you looking forward to at this year's event? I know IoTSSA will be out in full force with a booth, and we'll be covering the event. But what do you see and looking forward to discussing at the event?
So ChannelCon for us every year, and literally over the last decade, has been sort of a pivot point in the year. And we use CompTIA research, data, insight, and these events to really connect, honestly, with the channel and with partners. You know, we do so many shows annually, and they're all, very, very well put on, well attended, great conversations with partners and industry professionals. But ChannelCon seems to really solidify that conversation as a channel organization. And we take this opportunity to vet certain information and sit and learn and be educated ourselves. As we both know, that this industry moves at a very rapid pace and driven by a hype cycle. And I remember coming out of ChannelCon last year where the conversation had turned to security, which was nicely in alignment with what we're doing here at Passportal. But it really does sort of set you up for the conversations, the terminologies, the hype cycles, the innovations, and what the industry is talking about. So ChannelCon for me is one of those annual events I really look forward to and take as many notes as I do, speak at these things.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the IT security community for one thing. I know they have a few things on the plate this year, and the other one is I think they have an end user security training session too. So look to sit in there. And CompTIA is one of IoTSSA's research partners too. So we're happy to support them and looking forward to continuing that alliance. So excellent. But now let's talk about cybersecurity best practices. That's why we have you on here today. But in general, are MSPs, when it comes to cybersecurity, practicing what they preach in their own business?
So the answer is they have the knowledge, they have the ability, there's an old saying, the cobbler's kids have no shoes. And what we're honestly seeing in the market over the last couple of years of being in password security in the channel is that unfortunately isn't always the case, that we, as an MSP, are focused and tunnel vision focused on our clients and ensuring service delivery, feature functionality, automation of services, and security. But it's quite possible, and we've seen this firsthand, that the MSPs themselves are more and more, and we're going to talk about this today, becoming an extension of their clients' networks. and maybe haven't, deployed the same level of security, even training or applications internally to protect our clients with the credentials, information, and amount of data they're storing on their clients' behalf. So I think that'll set us up for a really good, interesting conversation today, Brian.
Yeah, I think it comes back to the old using, or I should say, eating your own dog food conversation that you've seen with PCs and hardware and software for years. But when it comes to security, I know I've had this conversation at some of the past IoTSSA events too, is many aren't as confident about what they've done and implemented in their own business because, they're focused on clients first and don't realize sometimes, the importance of bringing those same practices back inside their own MSP business. But
yeah, I think I agree with you. I think they do recognize the need. It's just we are so, as all sales organizations and service delivery organizations, we're focused on the customer. And it's often the last place we look is sort of internally on what we can do. Now, that said, the MSPs have done a phenomenal job adopting RMM technologies, PSA technologies, all to deliver more value. So this isn't foreign to this community of adopting internal technologies to better service clients. I just think that security is sort of the next area of focus for us internally. Doing so many shows, I know at DattoCon 18, the number of MSPs who sort of walked up to us and whispered to us, I'm not really sure that I'm securing my clients' passwords all that well. Can you guys help with that? And it comes down to a lot of the channel wouldn't openly promote how they're storing customer credentials today inside their own MSP. So I don't think they're oblivious to it. I don't think it's a lack of focus or desire. I just think it's one of those things that, hey, this is what we need to be doing today because of the way the market has changed and our service delivery model has changed and the amount of information we're storing for our clients as an MSP.
So taking that step back and kind of reassessing their priorities, because I'm sure they change a lot with the amount of data that, as you mentioned, is growing and the number of clients they have, and sometimes priorities slip. But I'm seeing the same thing, that recognition is there that they need to do more. It's how to do it and what steps to take. So with MSPs basically managing the keys to so many businesses, I think you alluded to, the networks and data repositories. Are these companies in the crosshairs of hackers? What are you seeing out there? What's the research showing?
Well, the research, thanks to IoTSSA, quite honestly, it was this year's roadshows with IoTSSA that exposed us to some of these things. One of the other vendor partners in the IoTSSA community, Infogressive, they did a presentation that I think we'll talk a little more about today, but they specifically identified the focus of the hacking community targeting MSPs specifically to access the SMB market. And it goes back to what we just talked about. The MSPs have done a great job deploying security training and applications into their clients, so they're more secure than the actual MSP themselves. So there's an organization called AP10 that as far back as April of last year, Channel Futures wrote articles about how they are specifically targeting MSPs to steal customer data. If you look at it from a nefarious standpoint, if you're a burglar that can hit one building that gives you access to lots of different units, that's a great area of focus. Rather than hitting house by house, you can go into a condo facility and hit them all if you get the keys to all of them. So that's really where they're focusing. And this is an area where, again, it's self-serving for the MSP, but it's a real advantage for the MSP to protect their clients internally because it becomes a differentiator. If I was an MSP who knew I was storing their credentials securely, I'd be promoting that as a differentiator. And a part of what we're doing as MSPs is educating our customers on technology advancements and service delivery and all of those good things. I'd be exposing them that, hey, we are a target for hackers to go after your data. That is why we have taken these proactive steps to ensure your data is secure, even with us internally.
Yeah, I think it could really be, I mean, if you have 40 or 50 clients, it could be the mother load of information as well as access into all of those different organizations. I think sometimes I don't necessarily sit back and think, I'm sure the MSPs are aware of a lot of the risks, but are they taking the proper steps, I guess, is the question, to make sure that they're implementing those things. And then, as you mentioned, promoting them to their own clients about what they've done to keep their
clients. When Infogressive shared this information with us again at the IoTA event, they talked about a pen test they did against a $40 million MSP. And this $40 million MSP said, yeah, come and see if you can hack us and get in and get into our corporate network and so on, is just taking a proactive step. And what Infogressive uncovered was not only were they able to penetrate a $40 million MSP pretty easily in less than 20 hours, but they immediately gained access to every one of their clients. And that was, it was shocking for this well-run organization, obviously of that size and caliber, to be penetrated themselves. But when they were told, not only did we penetrate your corporate network through your VPN, through your firewall, corporate email, everything else, but we have access to every one of your clients' admin passwords. That was the real eye-opener. And again, this is where, thankfully we play as Passportal as an organization. So you have these external risks that are coming in, and not only are they going to get to your banking information as an MSP, but you're exposing your clients, and that's the real risk.
Yeah, can you explain? I think the social engineering part of that demonstration is the impressive part. Is no matter how many tools you have in place and firewalls and stuff, it's the social engineering aspect that leaves a lot of the providers, and their clients, exposed most.
It was shocking, Brian. I mean, you were there and saw it. I know that audience. A lot of chins were on the floor listening to the presentation. But this, as Infogressive shared, and it was Derek Masters doing the presentation, he talked about, I think there was 200 or 300 technicians inside this MSP. And they said, so everybody's thinking, okay, well, you send 200 or 300 emails. They targeted 6 individuals, and within hours had them opening up gateways for them and had access to the passwords they needed to, again, break down through the VPN, into the corporate email, past the firewall, got into the domain controller, took over executive workstations, and they accessed the PSA, which was the gateway to all of their clients. So if you think of just 6 individuals in an organization of hundreds, it was one click by one individual that allowed this pen test to be so successful.
Yeah, it's kind of scary when you think about it, but people really are the weakest link in the security chain. We typically think of it in the SMB space or even the enterprise space, but even in a managed services organization, there can be 1 or 2 employees that don't know all of the best practices or simply trust the person calling. It's very easy if somebody has a convincing argument and has a little data on your company to be able to talk their way into having you do something and open up, access to an outside organization. It is extremely scary and frightening from a small business perspective too. But so mistakes and incompetence can play a big role when it comes to security from employees, but a rogue employee is another concern too. So we talked about, social engineering, they try to trick people into it, but you can also get individuals that may be unhappy in their job or simply, are looking to profit from getting access to information. And that even happens in MSPs. Do providers really need to worry about the rogue technician? Is this a big issue? Or are there other internal threats that they need to be concerned about?
It's staggering what this threat represents. CompTIA research gave us this stat that over 80% of MSPs that they surveyed had lost at least one technician in the previous 12 months. When you go online and do a search on specifically MSP security risks and technicians, we at Passportal found one article per week in North America that specifically talked about that case, a rogue technician either stealing credentials, maintaining credentials, accessing client networks after leaving an MSP. There's one from November of 2017 where the customer actually sued the MSP because one of their technicians did some very bad things after leaving the organization, and they hadn't locked down that credential. They won a near $1 million lawsuit against the MSP. The MSP ended up not being covered by insurance, and now they're suing their insurance company. But it all boils down to we've got to protect our clients' data from everybody. And that comes to it. We all have great employees. But we all know employees we can lose, and it's our responsibility to not allow them to put our own MSP or our clients at risk. And again, I have an article from every single month that has the word MSP and rogue technician in it for the last 18 months, and they are literally available on a weekly basis. There's other research that say up to 89% of those technicians who have left admitted to retaining access when they shouldn't have had access. And that is not their responsibility to shut that off. It is us as the MSP to ensure we're protecting our clients.
Well, you've kind of walked into it now that you've scared the daylights out of half of the listeners here, or more than half, I should say. What are the steps that channel companies should be taking to, you may not eliminate completely, but to lower the risks associated with rogue or even, issues that happen with social engineering in their own MSP business?
This is without sounding self-serving, and I'll talk about what password security can mean. But even Infogressive, their number one and number two recommendation to the MSPs based on the pen test that they did was first and foremost to not store client passwords in your PSA or your RMM or any other application that does not have encryption technology inside of it. That was number one. The number two recommendation was to implement 2FA. Two-factor authentication internally inside your own organization is critically important, and ultimately to treat your network exactly the way you would treat your client's network. So it's all about access control, and it's all about the security of the data. And what's great here, Brian, is that although this sounds, I've got to do this now, and I've got to change the way my technicians work and their flows, the result of doing that is actually an improvement in technician operational efficiency when you put proper security and access controls in place with an automated security solution that ensures your technicians who should be accessing data are accessing the correct data all the time. So there's not only the immediacy of the security benefits that you will pick up as an MSP and on behalf of your clients, but there's some operational efficiencies that you will see out of this as well. And that's where, I'm so excited with what we're doing with our partners when they call back and say, yeah, not only am I secure, but you know what? I'm actually fulfilling my mandate as an MSP to be even more effective in the service delivery that we provide our clients.
Gotcha. So we talked about the rogue IT. We talked about social engineering. What are some of the other security precautions that MSPs may be overlooking in their own operations too? I know doing an assessment sounds like it's crucial, needs to happen. To look for fallacy, but what else should they be doing, or do they commonly overlook?
I think training would be the other component internally, and I think one of the largest areas we're overlooking as an MSP is communicating to our partners and our customers what we're doing to service them, and that should start in this hype cycle, quite honestly, with security. I don't see enough MSPs promoting the investments they're making in automation, in their PSA, in their RMM, in how they train their own technicians as a differentiator. So there's lots of things other things we could be doing, but leverage what you're already doing. There was 1,600 MSPs at DattoCon. There'll be, 1,000 at ChannelCon. There'll be another 1,000 at IT Nation or 2,000 at IT Nation. The ones who join us at the IoTSSA road shows. And when I get on stage at those events, first thing I say is, you should all be tweeting and promoting the fact that you're spending a day to learn more and better your cybersecurity solutions on behalf of your clients. So I think it's not always about just deploying new technologies. It's about actually promoting the good work you're already doing.
Those are excellent points, because I know I've seen, you see there's a lot of people that you communicate with regularly on social media that talk about the things they're doing proactively. I follow quite a few MSPs, like on Facebook, and see them update, hey, we're at this show because we're here. We're learning some new things that'll help you adapt. I think Terry Cole's a good one. He was at DattoCon last month and doing some of those videos. I don't know if you saw, he did probably like 15 Facebook Live videos, and each segment was kind of talking about, here's what we're doing and how we can help your business. And I thought that was really unique from that perspective, but he was doing the things you're talking about that work really well, reinforcing those points. Do you find a lot of MSPs, I never hear MSPs, that's not saying they're not doing it, conducting the end user security training in their own business? Is it something you see a lot of people doing that just not discussing? Or do you think there needs to be a lot more of that happening, that maybe it's not taking place because the perception is they're IT experts, they should know the best practices?
I think both. I think they absolutely should be promoting it and absolutely should be doing it. Security needs to start at home, and as the MSP on behalf of your client, I think it's prudent for them to be explaining this. We do have your credentials. We do have your information. We do have access to everything inside your organization in order for us to deliver this service to you. And it's important that you as my customer understand this is how we're protecting you. This is how I train my staff. If I have a technician leave, and it doesn't have to be under the term rogue, but if I have a technician leave, their access is immediately cut off. I've implemented two-factor authentication. I think these are all key differentiators. We started to hear this at ChannelCon a little last year, and I'm interested to hear what the story is this year. But there's been some commoditization in the MSP market. There's actually some downward pressure on pricing. There is, who would have thought it when we started on the MSP journey 12 or 13 years ago? It was all about the break-fix hourly rate has been commoditized. So this MSP with recurring revenue was a way to break through that glass ceiling. And here we are a little over a decade later, and we're talking about downward pressure on per user pricing or per device pricing, whatever your flavor is to deliver. So we need to look for differentiators. And security, there isn't a greater hype cycle we've gone through maybe since Y2K than there is around security. So taking full advantage of that opportunity and that responsibility, I think, is prudent for everybody.
One of the things you mentioned, I think, leads into another question, Dan, which is you talked about consolidation in the channel. And a day doesn't go by at 4 o'clock. I don't see at least 3 or 4 mentions on channel E2E of MSPs being acquired, growing, expanding, all of these disparate systems coming together. What type of vulnerabilities does that leave? Maybe that you're consolidating businesses, maybe 2 MSPs are joining, bringing all those systems together. It's a busy time, personnel changes, everything. How vulnerable does that leave providers? Do they have enough time to go through and effectively lock down their security systems? Does that get done right away? Do you think, is that an area that needs to be focused on right off?
I think they do. I think it's interesting. Our new VP of Partner Success here at Passportal has got 20 years in the MSP on the operational side, and he's worked for both 3-man shops and most recently a much larger multi-city MSP. And I had these conversations with him. How did you went from a 22-person MSP that was acquired by this larger organization, and we spent a lot of time talking about how they were combining systems, operational efficiencies, and everything else. And it was interesting that maybe security wasn't at the forefront of that conversation. And talk about the potential for rogue technicians when you're acquiring and having that kind of turnover potentially. These guys got to go find a job somewhere else. And if they've been dealing with clients for some time, does that run a risk? So I think security itself, look what AT&T has purchased, look what SolarWinds has done, look what Continuum is doing. There is no question security is at the forefront in our industry. And with everything we're hearing on the news into the both consumer and SMB market, it's not going away anytime soon. So I think that's the opportunity for the MSPs is to, as they've always done a good job of, is explaining to their customers what's happening with emerging technologies, whether that be managed services or automation or now security. This is their opportunity to get out in front and fight some of that commoditization.
Excellent. That's great insight. Now, I've heard you mention the operational advancements gained by improving security in an MSP's business too. Can you explain that concept for the audience?
Yeah, this is such a great benefit to this, and specifically to Passportal, for example. Those who are adopting our technology and our platform are benefiting from three things. And the first is the obvious one on security. The other two are less obvious, but actually deliver the return on investment. The first is the lowering of service delivery costs internally. Better operational efficiency, better technician utilization. What's interesting when it comes to service delivery and credential management is that credentials are always needed every time that your technician is involved. There is usually a credential attached to it. The way credentials are stored, and again, I'll put security aside for a minute, the way they're stored and the lack of automation associated with them often means that the data they're trying to collect to do their job or required to do their job is not up to date. It is not accurate. So they need to change the password or find the password or share the password. And again, I'll leave security to the side for a minute. Just the straight operational inefficiency of that is staggering. And again, being a part of the evolution of managed services over the last 10 to 15 years, that's been at the core of everything we've been trying to do, right? Is automate technician efficiency, service delivery, value to the customer is measured by the amount of time to resolution. And when we're searching for a password, that's not good time management. So what's interesting is when we put in an automated system that has, interaction with Active Directory or Office 365, it gives all the nice password rotation policies and processes that we want to have from a security standpoint, but it also ensures that the right technician with controlled access is getting to the data that they need to perform their job. And that immediately delivers efficiency. And then on top of that, we've got, other services that we can do and eliminate password reset tickets, for an example, through an automated system. Those are the obvious ones, but often overlooked are the simplicity of, in my spreadsheet doesn't guarantee I've always got the most up-to-date credential that I need to do my job as a technician.
That makes perfect sense. As someone who has struggled both with my OneDrive credentials this week, syncing those up, and the second one is my Office 365. So, yeah, I can tell you I spent some time doing that. I could see when you multiply that across a larger business that could be extremely time-consuming. Awesome. So, how big of an issue is password security in MSP's businesses? I know that we've touched on it a little bit, but is it something that, well, I'll just let you explain at this point.
Well, it's as important as our willingness to tell our customers how we're storing their credentials and their data. I think it's incredibly critical, and we're leaving the keys to our clients exposed if we're not doing proper password security and access management for all the reasons we talked about. Whether it is external threats through APT10 hackers or rogue technicians or any other activity, you could have a technician from 2 years ago, and if you haven't locked them out or rotated passwords, they could still be accessing information. So again, self-servingly granted, but I think it is absolutely critical. And I would simply ask, and what I talk to MSPs every day about is, would you be willing to share with your client today how you're storing all of their credentials internally at your MSP? And if the answer is yes, great. If the answer is no, then you need to make that change. So I think it's critically important. I think it's an evolution. Pushing 2,000 partners now in 33 countries. We've seen it firsthand, the value it's delivering. And I applaud the partners who are really taking it forward to their clients as a differentiator.
That's awesome. Now let's flip the table too and look at how critical is documentation to the cybersecurity process, because I know that's another area that I've heard you speak on, and I'd love to get your thoughts on that before we sign off today.
Yeah, documentation's been a really interesting one over the last couple of years. Documentation itself promises operational efficiency, service delivery consistency, all of those good things, just delivering practices. But what's the key component to any documentation process that is for a ticket resolution? It again comes down to the credential. So as a part of a documented process, needs to be the credential to access the device or do an RDP session or whatever it is. And again, if you're just documenting it and putting in either an open password, that's not secure. You also can't guarantee that that's up to date. But most importantly is to inject a secure password and only accessible to the right individual. So we've seen a convergence between security and documentation really melding itself into the ultimate benefit, which is the advancements in operational efficiency and process with the added advantage of security and injecting that credential. And again, we've even seen some advancements there where reduction of clicks through the PSA or the RMM into the password and documentation solution, because you can just inject a credential and do that RDP access. We've done that with both the ConnectWise product and the Datto product as well. So it's really, again, multi-layered benefits that start with security, but it do include value to client and value to the MSP.
So Dan, you shared some great things with us today. The sad part is our time is coming to a close, so I could go on all day. But before we sign off today, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to leave with the audience?
Continue to innovate. Quite honestly, Brian, you and I have been doing this, and I know the audience has been doing this a long time, and it's what we love about this industry is it continues to evolve. Continues to grow, and all of that value and kudos goes to the MSP, who was originally the reseller and the value-added reseller and solution provider, and the MSP and maybe the MSSP tomorrow. The adoption of these technologies is driven the value to the clients and driven the value into the channel. So I'd applaud everybody, I think, for doing it. I think security is now our new hype cycle and something that every channel partner globally is going to benefit from immediately and in the distant future. And I think it's incredible what we're doing as an industry to protect customers and deliver services.
Excellent. So on behalf of IoTSSA, I'd like to thank Dan Wensley of Passportal for joining us for today's episode, and also thank those of you who tuned in to listen to the discussion. Please take a few extra minutes, if you would, and check out all the great cybersecurity content and research information, blogs that we have on the association's website before you get back to business today. That's IoTSSA.com. Thanks again, and please have a fantastic and secure day.